Hello and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. We're taking a step aside from our POV series and we are going to be doing a short tutorial about how to dock in IVA mode. This is both a tutorial and just kind of a video of what I went through as I was trying to learn this myself. I've never been great at docking. Oftentimes I just use the Matt Lown method of pointing both your docking ports at each other and then just firing the engine. But today I wanted to do it very, very true to form, very by the book kind of docking. And since I'm doing it in IVA mode, I'm not going to be switching to the other craft. It's all going to be done through the pilot. So what we have here is we have the craft that we're going to be docking to. It's just a 3-seat crew capsule with a bunch of life support on it, so that way the Kerbals don't die before we get there. Nothing else. It's not going to have any thrusters. It's not going to have any RCS. It's not going to have any control in any way. We are just going to send it up into space, and we're just going to cheat it up there. No need to, obviously we can't get it up there in the state that it is, but we're just gonna teleport it up and leave it there. We will be seeing it shortly. So now we go back to the Space Center, and here's where we're going to build our actual craft. So we're going to be using the ALCOR mod because that's what we've been enjoying so far. We will probably end up using the Mach 3 cabin, that one that you saw just right there. We probably will in our POV series, but for the time being, we've been really enjoying the ALCOR. So right now I'm just putting the parachutes on it. The goal of this was to bring it back to Kerbin, but by the time that we ended up docking, the video ended up being very long, so we're not going to show. We did end up bringing it safely back down to Kerbin. As you can see, there was a heat shield on the top of the Mach 3 command pod, and that brought us safely back home with those parachutes. But it's not really necessary for the video, since this is primarily just a tutorial of how to dock, and so we're just going to leave it once we succeed at our mission. Anyways, I'm putting some lights up on the front so I can see what I'm looking at when I go to dock. I put some solar panels to keep powered. It's life support at the bottom, and then a reaction wheel between the life support and the pod, just to catch up to where we're at. Right now I'm trying to figure out my monopropellant and my RCS. You want to have your RCS thrusters on either side of your center of mass. However, I wasn't quite ready because I forgot that my center of mass will change once I put the fuel tank on underneath. Right here, I'm looking forever trying to find the Poodle engine. It looked differently. I recently changed my parts mod recoloring. I don't know what you call it, but I'm using Restock Plus now. So I'm not familiar with how some of the engines look. I'm used to them looking a different way. So there you go. I see that my center of mass changed, so I moved my RCS thrusters down to match, and then I realized I don't need to keep the monopropellant on it on the ALCOR pod and try to bring that back. I can just put it on the fuel tank below. So here I am starting off with solid fuel boosters, but then I decide to get rid of them in favor of liquid fuel and a fuel duct. There we go, and just change the colors. I still don't have a great Delta V set out, so I decided to throw 2 more side boosters on and do some asparagus staging, because I know that this design will get us there. And this is primarily going to be teaching myself how to do this. Like I said before, I don't have too much experience in moving a craft around the target to get to the right place that I want to. And that's going to be important because once we start dealing with space stations, it's not always easy to just rotate the entire space station to point the docking node towards the approaching target. It's more important for the approaching target to, or the approaching craft, to maneuver itself around the target. So here I'm looking at map view, and we actually have a perfect timing for the approach. It's just right above us, so we don't have to do too much filling around getting to other sides of the planet to meet up with it, so that's nice. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of skip the liftoff because that's not really the important part here. So here we are just circularizing the burn, just to show you kind of where we're at in relationship to the pod once we circularize. Yeah, not too far away. So here I am. I'm just going to be plotting in the maneuver to try to get us to rendezvous. This isn't going to be a tutorial on how to rendezvous. For that, I will either make another video some other time, or more often I would recommend looking up some other YouTubers, specifically, their tutorials on how to rendezvous. But for the sake of this video, what I mean by rendezvous is I'm just trying to get both crafts as close as possible together in a very similar orbit. What I'm doing here, once I apply my maneuver, I'm just going through the revolutions by pressing that button. I was having the maneuver node go one more revolution each time, and then I timed it up so I have very close approach of what is that, 217 kilometers at the moment. So I'm just fast forwarding time. I have to do 2 days, 2 hours, yeah, 2 hours, several laps around the planet. But once we get there, we'll be quite close. So the things on the screen, a lot of what I'm looking at is going to be the closest approach, the node times, the burn times, and a relative velocity. Those are like a lot of the most important things that I'm going to be looking at. I'll try to explain what I'm looking at as I go along, and there might be some times when I'm just not talking at all. This is a rather large video, and as you can see, our closest approach is now 20 kilometers, which is pretty close. So what we're doing is we're pointing retrograde and burning so that we would kill our relative velocity. So we are going roughly around the same speed that our target is. And I want to make sure that I target the correct docking port. So now if you notice up there where it says PEA, that is our periapsis, it's now -17, so we are on a collision course with the planet. Didn't quite know that, and so I was wondering what that alarm was, but I wasn't really paying attention to it. I was paying more attention to my closest approach, and with that I was pointed retrograde so that way I could kill off my relative velocity very close to it. Luckily, our retrograde to the target was prograde to our orbit, and that brought us right back up to 80 some odd kilometers, 83 kilometers, 86 kilometers, excuse me. So yeah, sometimes depending on where you are, you may end up dipping back down into the atmosphere, and you have to fix that before you reach the atmosphere, otherwise you will probably end up crashing. Which is why it's better to rendezvous with crafts that are higher in altitude. 89 is kind of pushing it. As you can see, obviously, we fell into the atmosphere, or our trajectory fell into the atmosphere. So yeah, so now my closest approach is 17 meters, a lot closer, and I'm only going 3 meters per second faster than the craft, so I don't have to spend a lot of fuel killing our velocity, which is nice. So here I'm also looking at the distance, which is closing up fast. The approach speed and the relative velocity sometimes are different, and so it all depends on where you're at and what you're pointing at. See, right now I'm pointing at, I was pointing at retrograde, but now I want to point towards target retrograde, excuse me. And as you can see, my approach speed and the relative velocity is different. So I'm trying to kill the approach speed, and then I go and flip back towards our retrograde to kill the relative velocity. By getting that low enough, we start to balance ourselves out. Now I'm pointing myself towards the target because we're getting ready to close the gap. And it's at this point that our orbits are basically aligned. We don't have to worry about falling back into the atmosphere. We don't have to worry about the craft getting away from us. As long as we don't send ourselves flying too far out, we'll stay together. So that means that I can do the rest of this from this view, this IVA mode, which is going to be perfect for our series. And if you're playing in a similar fashion where you're doing first-person mode or you're doing IVA mode, knowing how to dock in this way without leaving will keep your immersion. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of struggle. It's a lot of on-your-edge seat. It's a lot of fast heart beating. But it was very gratifying once I finally got it. Oh, I should mention that this that you're looking at, the screen, I believe is the docking port alignment mod. I think you need to have that. I also recommend the tracking lights mod because that's what's keeping the light on the craft. Instead of just static lights pointing forward, I have the lights that are set to focus on the targeted vessel, and so it always keeps the light on it, which is very helpful. So I recommend getting those two. This is also the ALCOR pod and the ASET IVA mode. So as always, the mods will be listed in the description below. That's going to be all the mods for our... maybe I'll fix that. We'll see. It might be all the mods from the POV series. All depends on how much time I have by the time I get this done. So now we're just moving forward a little bit, trying to set ourselves up. I get a little bit better at this. I'm still not exactly sure what I'm looking at on the screen as far as information goes. I'm still kind of eyeballing it, but eventually I start paying attention to the numbers, the relative angles, the target distance, and the target velocity. So every now and then I want to put on SAS and point myself towards the docking port, but for the most part I want to turn SAS off and use just my RCS, because SAS will sometimes fight trying to keep itself pointed towards whatever it was set to. And it also uses more RCS just to do that when we could just use our reaction wheel. So now I'm coming in, I'm at a bad angle, but I'm lined up in a few different spots. As you can see, the target relative distance, the X mode is 0.4 and the Y is 0.6 and dropping. So I'm very close, and the Z is how forward and backwards I am. So I'm not even that far, and I'm lined up, getting myself lined up pretty well. But then I start drifting, and then I start overcompensating. Now my angles, the ones, the numbers that are in the top right of the screen, this is our angles. Those aren't good. My X is okay, as you can see, it's -4. That's relatively low, but my Y is going crazy as I'm pulling away from the craft. So that nice lineup that I had, I'm losing. So now I'm trying to fight it, and I'm still new enough at this that I'm not sure what the best way to fight it would be. So I keep pressing the wrong button, going even lower. I do want to mention that I reload twice on this. Since this is the Proving Grounds save file, which is my sandbox mode, and this is basically my flight school, I feel it's okay to do reloads and quick saves and all that because it's more for the concept than playthrough. In my POV series or whatever series that I'm going to be doing, I will most likely not be, well, in my POV series I definitely won't be, but I won't be quick saving and reloading. I will have to deal with all problems that arise. So we're just once again pointing ourselves at it. Sometimes it's very helpful when we lose sight of it. We're not sure which way to turn. It's actually good because it'll save monopropellant that way, because we won't be wasting it pointing in the wrong direction. We'll only point towards what we need to point towards. So once again, we throw on the SAS, kind of get ourselves lined up. We see here that we're once again we're too low and we're at a bad angle. And you can see down there, next to where it says RCS active, the green letters, or the green box with black letters in it, that number to the right of it, 256, 255, that is our monopropellant amount. We only brought 335, so relatively speaking, we haven't used a lot, but we still haven't gotten close enough, so it's something to pay attention to. I didn't know how much monopropellant to bring. I just threw on 8 times symmetry and did twice that, so 16 tanks, but you know, when you're going to be making your docking, whether it's to a stranded vessel or if it's to a space station, always keep in mind your monopropellant and try to pack a little extra. For one reason, you can it'll save you from getting stranded and not being able to control your craft, but because you run out of monopropellant. But you can also transfer any unused monopropellant to the space station or another craft or whatever if you end up with a surplus. So now I'm paying attention to my angles a little bit more, and the relative distance. Oh, the other thing to pay attention to is in the top left, the approach speed. When it's in green, I'm going towards the target, and when it's in red, I'm heading away from it. So that's another thing. When you're doing this, your eyes are going to be going to all 4 of these chunks of numbers. It's just it's a lot of information that will tell you where you are in position to the other craft. And then by understanding those numbers and how you're working together with that, you will be able to position yourself in space. So now here I am, the closest I've been so far to a dock, but again, I'm at the wrong angle. And I keep pushing myself away. So I'm trying to bring myself around. I can see the glimmer of sunrise coming to the left. Don't know why I decided to dock on the dark side, but I guess it did help because I had the tracking lights, so it didn't really matter, so that's good. But if you don't have lights or lights like that, definitely recommend trying to dock on the daylight side. I can't imagine what would have gone down if I didn't have any lights on this, trying to dock in the dark. I would be doing it by numbers alone, I believe. So yeah, so now I'm getting really far away from the craft. All that overcorrecting adds up. Yeah, I'm about to use a lot of fuel just to catch up again. If you notice in the center of the crosshairs, you'll see 4 little orange arrows. That's pointing in the direction that the RCS is pushing me. Oh, I should actually explain. So the WASD, Q, and E keys rotate where your docking port is looking at. So if I want to start to look to the left, I would, if I wanted to look to the left but not move to the left, I would press the A key to look up, W, and to rotate the craft, Q and E's. And then by default, the other keys are I, J, K, L, H, and M. But I remapped mine to my number pad, and if you have a number pad, I strongly recommend doing that. So in order to move forward in space, I press 8. To move backwards in space, I press 2. Left is 4, right is 6, and then if I want to move vertically or vertically up or vertically down, I do the plus and minus key. I strongly recommend remapping the RCS controls to that. It keeps your hands from being too cramped on the keyboard, and in my opinion, the directionality of how it's laid out makes a lot more sense than the I, J, K, L, H, and N keys, multiple keys. Alright, so I'm lining myself up again. I was able to catch up to it and fix my mistake. Start to see some islands or some land masses of Kerbal passing underneath us as we get out of the darkness, reminding us of just how long it's taken us to do this. So I just point my SAS towards the target, just kind of get myself realigned for cheap. I turn off the RCS when I do that and just let the reaction wheel adjust our view. And I'm just heading in very, very slowly, but still positive. And then my approach speed goes negative, and now I'm pulling away from it, so I have to push forward again. But I don't want to do anything too fast. And as you can see, once again, my relative angles up in the top right, the X and the Y are very bad, -42, -27. So I'm coming at it from the side. But we can worry about changing our angles once we get closer. Trying to change your angle while quite far away, you'll end up utilizing too much fuel. So yeah, coming in at the side. And see, this is why I didn't want to put any RCS or anything on the other craft. For those who may not know, Matt Lown is a YouTube KSP star, one of the greats that has tons of great tutorials and whatnot. But he coined, or actually his community coined, his docking method, the Matt Lown lazy docking method. And ultimately, it requires you to have both targets targeting each other and pointed towards each other, and then you just push one at the other one. It works like a charm. Definitely recommend it. But in this situation, if I had done that, the tutorial would have been over. So we need to. So we're going to have the headache and have the stress of trying to rotate ourselves around the craft instead of pointing the craft towards us. And also the idea is, say, we're gonna say that the craft that we're trying to dock to has no power whatsoever. It is uncontrollable. So there's no way that it can point itself towards us, even if it wanted to. So how are we going to work with that? We got to do it ourselves. As you can see, the target distance is pretty close. 3, 2, and 6 meters. The angles are bad from the top right. But we're ahead of the craft, so we could just, as we're doing here, push ourselves forward, and then once we're at a good distance, we can turn ourselves and point towards the docking port. And I thought we had covered more ground, or covered more space than we did, but of course we didn't. So now I'm just pushing forward. Now I'm pushing up and to the side. Yeah, so we're very close. We're only about a meter away in all sides. So now we're trying to turn ourselves, and we're starting to get too fast, and we overcorrected too much. And so now we're back onto a bad angle. If you are playing with quick saves and you can allow yourself to reload and stuff, definitely quick save often. Maybe even make a couple different ones based on how close you are to it or how much monopropellant you have left. As you can see now, I only have about 61. So by pointing our crosshairs right at the center, we're essentially doing like how SAS would be doing by pointing towards the target. You can see right there it only made a minor correction. Coming close, we still have a bad angle, but maybe the magnetic forces could take over. But of course they don't. So I'm really trying to shove myself in there. Now we get the closest we've been to it. But no matter how hard I try, magnetic force wouldn't work right there. And we get the low fuel warning. We're just fighting it, trying to shove our way over and let the docking ports do the rest. Then in our correction, we start pulling away from it. So I'm trying to readjust, push forward. We're getting too wild with our angles. And before I know it, we're out of fuel. No more monopropellant. So I was very frustrated, and at this point I was thinking, well, let's just do it. Let's just do the Matt Loud method. And I was going to end my tutorial with, well, when that happens, just do this, and you'll be fine. Just point towards each other and fire. And as you can see, the relative angles are 0, the target distance are 0. And all we have to do is fire our engine to point towards it. But of course, we're also not pointing. We're not completely lined up. But that's when I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? No. I set out to do a task, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it all in IVA. So I go ahead and reload my save. It doesn't give me as much of an advantage as one might think. Because I saved at only 52 units of monopropellant left. So I still have to contend with low fuel. Can't dilly-dally out here in space. We gotta get these things linked up. Once again, we just got the low fuel warning. So now we're just going by numbers, looking at our relative angles, looking at at a relative distance. Go ahead and I put my SAS back on, which is risky. We only have 18, 17, 16 on our propellant left. Using SAS uses RCS, but we managed to brute force our way and the magnets take over. And wouldn't you know it, we docked. Mission success. I let out an audible cheer when this happened. Well, that will be it. Hopefully you learned some things to help you out in your own missions, your own IVA docking, and we will be doing this in our KSP POV series soon enough. Well, thank you so much for watching. If you like this, please consider giving a like, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.